And today we are joined by yet another transplant athlete, Mr. Jon Windsor. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks.
So, Jon, talk to us about, firstly, your experience with your transplant. Obviously, yours came a little bit later. So, was it something that you always sort of knew was going to come along from a young age?
No, not at all. So when I was a kid and when I was a teenager, I was always really active and did loads of sport. And then I was sort of getting into my early 20s and noticing that, I wasn't quite as fit as I was, and just put that down to like having more responsibilities and being older and stuff. And then I was kind of getting worse and worse and worse. So eventually, I was diagnosed with kidney failure and was on dialysis for 3 years, and then I had the transplant.
Yeah, so you said that you were sort of active previously. What sort of sports did you get up to before your kidney operation and stuff?
Anything I could really, but definitely football and cricket, and then I always did like sort of climbing and that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, but football and cricket were my main two.
When you first got diagnosed, what was it like, sort of mentally? How did you cope with it in that respect?
I think it depends on your situation. For me, it was kind of a relief, because it was good to know that I wasn't ill because I was stressed or because I couldn't cope with my job or because I was getting old. It was good to actually have a reason for how I was. So in some ways, it was kind of a relief. Obviously, I was sort of told I was going to be in hospital for quite a while, so that was a bit of a shock. And then sort of having the dialysis, and I was just starting my career as well at that point. So having the dialysis with the new career was sort of tricky to manage. But
yeah, and leading up to the operation, sort of yourself and your family, was there any sort of nerves that potentially it didn't go wrong? How quickly were you on sort of a match list for and stuff like that?
Well, it was, I was really lucky because it was my dad that was able to give me a transplant. It took a while to set everything up because there were lots of tests that he had to go through, as you'd expect. So obviously my biggest worries were, was he going to be okay? His worries would have been, am I going to be okay? Is it going to be worth it? And so on. So, I think we were worried for each other, but basically happy to give it a go ultimately.
And yeah, so you had the operation. It's obviously a success. You're transplanted now, and you're healthy. So talk to me about the aftermath of your transplant. So how long did it take you to sort of get back to a normally leading life and then progress that into a sort of an active life?
Yeah, so within about 6 weeks, I was ready to go back to work, and I don't think I was technically supposed to go back, but yeah, I started making myself useful and getting back to work. And then the place I worked at the time, so there was a guy there who was really into his running. He was he's like the world running champion and weird stuff like that. So he basically got me and a whole bunch of other others into running, and that was my real way back into being properly active. And that was probably like a year later or something like that I was doing that kind of thing. So it was a sort of steady build up of my usual stuff like walking and climbing and so on, and then getting to know this guy and getting into the running. That sort of gave me that bump that I needed. Yeah,
and do you think when was your first sort of encounter with sport in a transplant sector? So obviously you've been running with friends and workmates. So when was your first encounter with the transplant sporting world?
I think it was around about the same time, but so there was the Transplant Games in Liverpool, which was 2016, I think. So at the time I was in Staffordshire, so I hooked up with the North Staffordshire transplant athletics team to take part in the games. And that same summer, I'd also joined the England and Wales transplant cricket team, which are absolutely fantastic bunch of people. And so, yeah, I started to play cricket again with them that summer as well.
Yeah, so we haven't had a cricketer yet. So talk to me about the cricket side of things. I'm a massive cricket fan myself. So how much of a sort of community did you guys build, and how successful are you?
Yeah, I mean, the community is brilliant. We've got we've got a WhatsApp group, so even in the closed season or when we can't play like now, we're always in touch, and we support each other not just from a cricket point of view, but also if you've got health issues or just in general. It's just a really nice little group. And then sort of the teams have gone through lots of different phases. So well before I was there, they toured Australia, and the Australia transplant team had played here. So there's some good stories about that. And then they've had some relationship with the ECB, and some we've sort of trained with the England disability team. We had a talk with Ian Salisbury, who was the disability team manager, ex-leg spinner. I don't know if he still does that. And then we sort of played games against our actual club teams, and we played games against like the county's disability teams and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's really, really good.
Absolutely. And is it that sort of community feel that it's sort of, we've talked about it with others, it's like that really endears you to sort of go back and keep doing it?
Yeah, it's that, and it's also like sport and sort of wanting to win as well. And I bet a lot of people will have said the same thing in transplant sport, where on the one hand, yes, it's an absolutely fantastic community thing, but also you've got that balance between, but I do want to play sport and I do want to be competitive and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's nice to have both sides, I think.
Absolutely. So talk to me about your first actual Transplant Games, and how was it sort of like represent your area and stuff like that? It must be like sort of an honour in that respect.
Yeah, no, it was great. So as I say, the first one was in Liverpool, and I was representing North Staffordshire, and we had quite a small team. But no, it was really, really good, and good to sort of meet people from around the country who had the same interests as you, and compete against them and see the different standards. Because I always kind of thought I was reasonably fit for a guy who had a transplant, and then you'll see people who, you know, there was a guy in his 50s running 100 meters in 12 seconds and this kind of thing. You think, okay, well, it's you know, there's a lot of very talented people out there.
Yeah. So can you pinpoint one particular moment that really defines your time in the transplant sporting world?
Good question. I don't know. I guess last year we had the Transplant Games in Newport in Wales, and probably the moment that I thought was absolutely brilliant was, so I've moved and I'm now representing Addenbrooke's in Cambridge, and we did the 100-meter relay as like the sort of final thing to round off the weekend. And you know, I had the glory lap. I had the last 100 meters, and it was just really, really good. You know, we were a mixed team, and we were sort of all in it together. And so this guy who must be getting into his 60s or 70s had done the first 100 meters, and then someone else took it on, and then we all just sort of came together and got a good finish with it. And it was just nice to sort of have that team involvement, and it was a good way to crown the weekend.
Absolutely. So to finish it off, this is the way we always like to finish it off. We're going to create like a graphic at the end of this mini feature series. But can you define in 3 words what transplant sport has done to you?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely motivated me, and it's inspired me, but it's also humbled me as well.
Brilliant. Perfect. Motivated, inspired, and humbled. We'll put them on the old graphic. Thank you very much, Jon, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure learning about your story, and this will be out soon. I don't know what branding it will be under, because we are going through a little bit of a rebrand here. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
No problem. Thank you.